Hey everyone, welcome to Moment of Clarity. Thanks for being here. A mere 400 million stolen by Zelensky and his fellow goons. I'll get into that story coming from Seymour Hirsch, but I'm also going to get into a lot of other stuff, such as the U.S. government trying for a brief moment to respond to the idea that countries are leaving the petrodollar, which of course is an epic fail for our ability to just squeeze other countries by the throat. They actually responded, not really, but they tried kind of to respond to that situation. More bank failures, massive bank failures. I'm going to get into that. Yeah, just a lot coming up. So hang in there and let's do it. Let's do it. Yes, someone's asking, I'm in my library. These are all my books. I have no idea what they are because, fun fact, not my books. So I don't actually know what's behind me. So if you find the Kama Sutra for little people on the shelf behind me, that is it's something I support, but it's not a book I own. Okay, it's not. I didn't place that there. Thanks for being here, everybody. Did I mention that? Let's get into Seymour Hirsch's article revealing what he says he has found, which is massive embezzlement by the Zelensky government. And of course, most of you know that Seymour Hirsch, one of the best known, one of the most amazing, famed journalists in American history, revealed the My Lai massacre, among other things. And yet he can't get a job in U.S. media. Does that tell you something about U.S. media? Does that tell you something about our goddamn media? If the best journalists in the fucking world can't get a job in our mainstream media. And of course, the reason is not that they're not good journalists. The reason is that they're actually revealing the truth, which is not welcome in our mainstream media. That is not welcome at all in our mainstream media. So that's why he's not there. But anyway, here's a new article. And he, of course, is the one who revealed that the Biden administration had taken out the Nord Stream pipeline, which is a huge act of international terrorism, a huge environmental destruction, the largest ever single burst of methane to the atmosphere. And methane is many times worse for the atmosphere and for global warming than carbon dioxide is. Anyway, this is his new article. Titled Trading with the Enemy. There's a nice buddy photo of Biden and Zelensky just hanging, just having fun with each other. The Ukraine government, headed by Zelensky, has been using American taxpayer funds to pay dearly for the vitally needed diesel fuel that is keeping the Ukrainian army on the move in its war with Russia. And there's really two bombshell moments in this article. I will highlight both of those. What is also known is that Zelensky has been buying the fuel from Russia. This is the second bombshell of the two. So the Ukrainian government is buying diesel fuel from Russia to be at war with Russia. They are buying the fuel from Russia to fight Russia. Of course, that also means that Russia is selling the fuel to Ukraine to fight Russia. So it's insanity on both sides, really. And this is the catch-22 world we live in, and I mean that specifically by the novel title. I'm not talking about the way it's used nowadays, the idiom, but it is completely inverted to how any logical behavior would be. You wouldn't sell fuel to your enemies to fight them. You wouldn't buy fuel from your enemies to fund them. But that's what the situation is. He is buying fuel from Russia in order to fight Russia. But it gets even more insane than that, in that the U.S. is funding Zelensky, right? Zelensky is they call him the leader of Ukraine, but he's a friendly fellow with Biden's hand up his ass, which is not a pretty picture. Don't stop and think about that. And he is funded by the U.S., right, to the tune of over $100 billion while our infrastructure collapses, while people are struggling, while the gut-wrenching inequality exists in this country. We sent $100 billion, over $100 billion to Ukraine. That money is then used to buy fuel from Russia, so to fund Russia. So American taxpayers at the end of the day are paying Ukraine to buy fuel from Russia to fight Russia in a U.S. proxy war. I mean, like you don't want to sit and ponder that one for too long, or all your memories will shoot at your butthole. Like that is not a good thing to think about. But then you get into the embezzlement side, which is the other bombshell from this article. One estimate by analysts from the CIA. I don't know if you've heard about them, young upstart organization called CIA. They're doing some fun stuff. One estimate by analysts from the CIA put the embezzlement funds at $400 million last year, at least. Another expert compared the level of corruption in Kiev as approaching that of the Afghan war, although there will be no professional audit reports emerging from Ukraine. Yeah. Something tells me they're not going to sit down and actually analyze what is actually happening in Ukraine, the level of embezzlement, the level of theft. And as Seymour Hirsch said on a recent interview, that 400 million is a drop in the bucket when you compare it to the 100 billion that has been sent to Ukraine. But that drop in the bucket is still substantial embezzlement, substantial theft, substantial fraud. And it also speaks to why Zelensky and his cronies wouldn't see fit to sit down at a peace table with Russia. Now, of course, the main reason is that the U.S. has stopped any peace negotiations. But another reason is that they're getting rich from it. Quote, Zelensky's been buying discount diesel from Russians, one knowledgeable American intelligence official told me. Quote, and who's paying for the gas and oil? We are. Putin and his oligarchs are making millions on it. So you really have two sides of oligarchs, two sides of criminals and thefts getting rich off this war, although actually it's three sides once you throw in U.S. and Russia. So you have three countries' oligarchs enriching themselves from this war. Now, that is not the real reason for the war. There are some anti-war left-wing folks who kind of end their analysis at like, well, they're getting rich. That's why they're doing it. They're at war just to get rich. And that's certainly not helping, but that's not the real reason. The real reason is the waning power of the U.S. empire, the waning power of the petrodollar, trying to cut off Russia from European neighbors that it should naturally be aligned with, should naturally work with on policy, on economics. Being that they are neighbors, and they were, but then the U.S. stopped it all and turned Europe back into vassal states. So in that regard, it got what it wanted. Now, in terms of the sanctions, many of them have backfired, and that in that way, the U.S. has not gotten what it wanted. The issue of corruption was directly raised with Zelensky in a meeting last January in Kiev with CIA Director William Burns. Don't you love that the corruption in Ukraine is so insane, is so unbelievable that you have the heads of the U.S. empire, in this case, the head of the CIA, sitting down with Ukraine and being like, look, we're having a blast with this proxy war with you. We love it. We love it. We love working with you. But your criminality, your corruption is a little, shall we say, on the nose, a little out front. A little too obvious. Could you just, back it off a little? If you'd stolen 100 million, wouldn't have batted an eye. But 400 million, it's not looking so good. And you know, I mean, take a play out of like Obama's playbook. You don't do the corruption while you're in office. Well, he was corrupt in other ways, but you don't do the theft. You don't do the grabbing of money while you're in office because it looks kind of bad. It looks kind of shady. So what you do is you wait until after office, roughly a week or two, and then you run to the corporations, the massive corporate entities that you did all the favors for, hence the in-office corruption, but you didn't get paid for it. And you run to them and you say, now it's time to pay me back for all the things I did. And Obama then gave a $400,000 speech to hedge funds, or no, to big banks, JP Morgan and others, Goldman Sachs and et cetera, on Wall Street. So he speaks for about an hour, gets 400 tickets, it gets close to $500,000, does that a few times, enriches himself in a couple of days at a level that most Americans will never come anywhere near seeing. And that's how you do it. That's how you do it. Just like that. And then it's not even commented on. Doesn't even really get much of a comment. The senior generals and government officials in Kiev were angry at what they saw as Zelensky's greed. So the senior generals in Ukraine were upset that Zelensky had stolen too much of the cake. So Burns told the Ukrainian president because he was taking a larger share of the skim money that was going to the generals. Burns also presented Zelensky with a list of 35 generals and senior officials whose corruption was known to the CIA and others in the American government. Zelensky responded to the American pressure 10 days later by publicly dismissing 10 of the most ostentatious officials on the list and doing little else. The 10 he got rid of were brazenly bragging about the money they had. So you have the massively corrupt Zelensky working with the massively corrupt American government. But even within that, you have generals and officials in Ukraine that are just a little too obviously corrupt. It's like the Hunter Bidens of the list. And they're like, could you just cover it up a little? So he fires 10 of them out of the 35. He got 35 guys that are so amazingly corrupt that it just became like publicly known that they're amazingly corrupt, stealing all of the U.S. funds and the arms, selling the arms on the black market, etc. And it's too on the nose, too in your face, which was also the problem with the Trump presidency for the American ruling elite. It wasn't that he didn't address inequality or the fact that he was racist. They loved all of that. That's wonderful. It was the fact that he was too outwardly racist and that he was too outwardly corrupt. He was too outwardly talking about how rich he is, how rich he could get, what he could do. You gotta do the Obama style. All right. You gotta a little juking and jiving, cover it up a little, wear a fake mustache. Even if you have a real mustache, wear a fake one on top, something there to cover it up so that you're not so obviously corrupt. Zelensky's half-hearted response and the White House's lack of concern was seen, the intelligence official added, as another sign of a lack of leadership that is leading to a total breakdown of trust between the White House and some elements of the intelligence community. Here's a quote from the intelligence official. There is a total breakdown between the White House leadership and the intelligence community. The rift dates back to the fall when, as I reported in early February, this is Seymour Hirsch speaking, Biden ordered the covert destruction of the Nord Stream pipelines in the Baltic. Destroying the Nord Stream pipelines was never discussed or even known in advance by the intelligence community, the official told me, and there is no strategy for ending the war. So you see, there is a rift going on in the Beltway elite. There is a rift where some are offended that Biden and his cronies, his goons, his criminal elite blew up the Nord Stream without really consulting them. Some of them are upset about that. Others are upset that the Ukraine war should be wrapped up. Many are promoting that idea, including Henry Kissinger, among others, saying, listen, we need to start wrapping this up because it's just draining our resources and we've gotten what we wanted and what we haven't gotten that we wanted, we're not going to get. So time to move on. So there is a rift, and you see that rift in that some are saying, send all this extra weaponry to Ukraine, send it all in there. And others are saying, wrap it up. Let's move on. Let's move on to the next war. We got a whole, I don't know if you can see the line out the door. We got a whole line of wars that are waiting to happen, okay? And listen, you've been working with this one customer for like ever. Could you look at that line. Look at that fucking line. You got China, you got, Iran. Maybe we'll do something with Cuba. Come on. There's a lot. Haiti. There's a long line there of places we are trying to harm, obliterate, or go to war with. And you're spending all your time on Ukraine. This customer is done. They're done. You tried to help them. Move on. Anyway, so that is some of the latest from Seymour Hirsch, which, really does show the level of corruption that is going on. The amount, and he said it's starting to get to the levels of the Afghan war, which I covered that corruption on multiple different episodes. Just unbelievable amounts of money going missing. Of course, there's the 21 trillion of unadjusted, unaccounted for financial adjustments at the Pentagon, just a mere 21 trillion. There are literally pallets of cash going missing in Afghanistan and Iraq. And I don't mean like $100. I mean pallets of billions going missing. There was, as veteran Matthew Ho, who is now very much against war, has revealed while he was in Afghanistan, he was given saran-wrapped bundles of cash up to $1 million to hand out to Afghan warlords if they would do what the U.S. wanted, like take out other Afghan warlords or burn their poppy fields or whatever. Just breathtaking amounts of fraud and corruption. And now Ukraine getting to that level. And why would they want to stop the gravy train? When you can just stand hundreds of billions to pocket along the way, everybody gets a taste, right? That's the mafia's terminology, right? Everybody gets a taste. All right. So speaking of how this proxy war is actually about the petrodollar at the heart of it, and about geopolitical domination. I guess but the petrodollar is such an important part of that. Let's get on to, this is one of the rare moments that a U.S. government official is asked to speak to or address anything about the petrodollar, the U.S. dollar, the U.S. reserve currency, which is, of course, a major issue. But the U.S. doesn't want to address it. Last I checked, it doesn't even have an English language Wikipedia article. That's how much they've done to cover it up, the petrodollar. So here is National Security Council spokesperson Kirby speaking at, obviously, in the White House press room. And I know the guy asking the question is a little hard to hear, but do your best and just watch Kirby's confused eyes, baffled at such a question.
Japan holds $1.2 trillion, the largest U.S.
I'm seeing if it goes any louder. I will tell you, just in case you can't hear it really enough at all, the guy is asking him, are you concerned about all these nations that are moving outside the dollar? To sum up his question.
Japan holds $1.2 trillion, the largest U.S. debt, and there's a growing number of countries seem to be moving away from the use of the dollar. Is there an understanding of a concern for that? As the world reserve currency is really a big part of why the U.S. is able to exert its leadership. Is there understanding of the fact that countries are beginning to turn away from the use of the dollar and some way to resolve that?
Well, I have to let Japan speak to their economic policy. The
number of countries that are beginning to denominate in dollars away from the U.S. dollar.
I'm going to have to take your question, sir. I don't have a good answer for you.
Yes, Japan holds $1.2 trillion.
So I don't know whether you could hear that at all, but even if you couldn't hear it, just look at the look on his face. This is the look of a U.S. government spokesperson when asked whether you're concerned that so many nations are going outside the dollar. And of course, if you have a lot of nations going outside the petrodollar, then there is no petrol. Like the dollar collapses greatly, bigly, as Trump would say. It collapses bigly. And they have no response. They have no answer. They just have him with his eyes. What? I've never heard of such a thing. I mean, I'm pretty sure I saw those exact eyes on a Scooby-Doo episode once when a ghost came out of a closet and he was like, "Meh." That is... This is the brightest minds in America, right? That's what our government officials are, the brightest fucking minds in America. And when they're asked, are you concerned that one of America's largest tools for strangling and destroying other nations and maintaining U.S. empire is wisping away like so many dandelion spores? He goes, I don't know what you're talking about. What? And let me also just say this. If you, let's say you support U.S. empire, you want the U.S. to rule the world, and you are not a moron, so you understand that the dollar being the reserve currency, being one of the most powerful aspects of it, is very important. And let's say you're really pro-America. You're like, yes, America rocks. I love America, man. I lost my virginity at an America concert. Like, you're just like, yeah, America. Even if you were like that, wouldn't you want your government officials to actually have heard of the petrodollar? To actually have an informed and interesting answer to how they're going to fight so many countries standing up and going outside the petrodollar? So I'm saying, even if you were a all-American right-winger, this response right here, those eyes should still frustrate you, should still piss you off. But again, this is what can't be said. He's making that look not just because they can't address the reality, which is in behind closed doors, they're having meeting after meeting of how to crack down on countries going outside the petrodollar, how to nail them with economic sanctions, which is tougher and tougher if they're not in the dollar system, how to squeeze them and crush them, what to do about China because China's beginning to go outside the dollar. They're having endless meetings. His job is not just to deny that is happening, but his job is also to act like we don't even know that's what issue you're talking about. What? Now, Biden may legitimately have that response because he's not cogent and he's been running out of his vitamins. So, all right, let's move on to more economic suffering in the United States. And this isn't exactly connected to the problems with the petrodollar, but it's not far off. Another massive bank, the second largest banking collapse in American history, has just happened. I'll repeat that, second largest bank collapse in American history has just happened. And I'm not saying there's no mainstream media coverage, but I can promise you that whatever mainstream media coverage there is rather small, and it probably says that everything's fine and your money is fine and don't worry about it. And someone's asking about the second largest banking collapse again. Yeah, because the second largest banking collapse happened a month ago in American history, but now this one's bigger than the second largest ever. Washington Mutual being the first largest, which was back during 2008. And so this has now taken the place of the one that happened a month ago, meaning we've seen the second and third largest banking collapses in American history over the past month and a half. Now, First Republic Bank, second largest collapse in American history. On International Workers' Day, May Day, the First Republic Bank became the second largest bank to fail in U.S. history. The $233 billion institution was seized by the government and sold to banking behemoth J.P. Morgan Chase, which, by the way, regulation has said that J.P. Morgan Chase is not legally supposed to get any bigger, and yet they just bought up one of the largest banks. They were just given one of the largest banks in the nation. First Republic is the third bank to fail in the U.S. since March, surpassing the spectacular failure of Silicon Valley Bank on March 10th. Silicon Valley Bank's depositors were bailed out by the U.S. government to the tune of $151 billion. Up until May 1st, Silicon Valley Bank had been the second largest bank failure in the history of the country. Capitalists in the United States did not predict that this title would be usurped less than 2 months later. So again, we've had the second and third largest banking collapse in American history in the span of 2 months. And we'll get to a little more of this, but this has to do with the Federal Reserve raising interest rates. And they're doing that because they want the economy to suffer because workers were getting too powerful. They claim it's to fight inflation. It's not really to fight inflation. I mean, maybe a little bit, but the main reason is workers were getting too powerful. There was too little unemployment. There was too much worker power. And now it's having the desired effect that these entities are going, I mean, the desired effect was not for these banks to go bankrupt, but the desired effect is for people to lose their job. And there has been massive layoffs, and they continue. Following Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank, a New York-based institution with a large real estate lending business, also failed only 2 days later. Amid the banking crisis panic, First Republic Bank received a $30 billion lifeline from 11 of the largest banks in the country, but that attempt to save it was unsuccessful. The total assets of the 2023 bank failures now surpass all bank failures of 2008, which we thought was fucking insane. And now they've surpassed that. The beginning of the Great Recession. The U.S. Treasury Department has claimed that the nation's banking system is sound and resilient following First Republic's collapse. I love how they're like, it's sound and resilient as it's all collapsing down behind them, just fucking buildings falling over. And they're like, it's looking great. We're doing fine, America. And meanwhile, just fire and carnage. A dude naked on fire runs by. And then you've got our PR people of America standing out front going, your money is safe. Have no fear. Everything is fine here. Nothing to see behind me. That's exactly what's going on right now. First Republic's failure is directly tied to the Federal Reserve's raising of interest rates. The U.S. Federal Reserve has decided to address the inflation crisis. Now, this is where I slightly differ, that yes, they're doing it to address the inflation crisis, but really they're doing it to address worker power. I think that is on their list of reasons to do this. Worker power is at the top. I feel. As a result of increased interest rates, because you could stop a lot of the price gouging by like simply the president saying there'll be no more price gouging. There'll be like on staple foods and things like that. Nixon did it. It works. You could actually say groceries are not going to go up anymore, and it can work. Now, I'm not saying that solves everything, but also if you didn't want this kind of fucking inflation and problems, and one thing you could do is not increase the money supply by 20% during the pandemic by dumping $4.5 trillion into Wall Street. Literally, the money supply in the U.S. increased by 20% during the pandemic because they just print money to send to Wall Street. And other countries can't do that. We can do that because our money, we can print money and it keeps its power because it's the global reserve currency and the petrodollar. As I've said, that power seems to be wavering a little. As a result of the increased interest rates, the economy slows. Prices go down because of this generated economic slump, and economically unsound businesses begin to close, and banks lend less money. The effects of this blow in the name of combating inflation include mass unemployment, as well as politicians using an economic crisis as an excuse to cut social services. Yeah, they love to do that too. Oh, it's tough times. You can't have healthcare anymore. If it's tough times, shouldn't you give more people healthcare? Like, it's fucking tough times. Give them healthcare. It's tough times. We're not going to fund public schools anymore. Didn't you just say it's tough times? I feel like you should fund public schools more. It's tough times. We're going to stop fixing our infrastructure. Wait, does that help with tough times? What the fuck? But that's their answer. That's their answer, is to use any excuse to decrease services, which should be rights in this country. In a one of the richest countries in the world, these should all be rights. Healthcare should be a right. Housing should be a right. Clothing should be a right. But of course it's not. And people are destroyed by it, which I hope I have time to get to Jordan Neely's killing in a few minutes. But ultimately, through raising interest rates, the Federal Reserve is forcing workers to bear the brunt of the inflationary crisis rather than capitalists, rather than the top of the system, rather than the richest of the rich who have been in charge of raising prices in the first place. They've gotten incredibly wealthy during this time of inflation, while the average people have suffered immensely. Okay, I want to move on because I have a bunch of stories I want to get to. This will be a short, fun story. Let's just throw this out there. This is because we know we had the coronation just happened, and listen, it is so important. Okay, I hope everyone really focused on it, really thought about it, because it is so important that you celebrate a unelected ruler that doesn't really do anything anymore and has been responsible. The system of the monarchy has been responsible for some of the gravest, most atrocious crimes in human history, full-on genocides. And so I really think that you should celebrate what a wonderful fella this guy is, and how great he's going to do in this position that has little to no power, but owns like a third of the world. All right. If you include, Canada and Australia and everything as being in the British Crown Commonwealth. But speaking of crowns and scepters, I'll just throw this little in here. This little story in here. Pictured here in King Charles's scepter are shards of the Star of Africa diamond. The stone was stolen from South Africa in 1905 and is worth $400 million. That's the same amount Zelensky stole. Isn't that funny? And they could have just given him that diamond. That'd be a lot easier to cover up than ciphering money all the time. Sorry, siphoning. The British later renamed the gem the Cullinan Diamond, named after the owner of the mine from where it was stolen. Isn't it beautiful? Isn't that just a beaut? She's a beaut, Clark. I love that when, the Queen's funeral and the coronation and everything, these people, the monarchy, who are trying desperately to tell people, look, we've changed. We're cool now. We love you all. We do good around the world now, right? All of our sons and daughters are in philanthropy. That's what we do now, is really just philanthropy. And we just help people. I love how while they're doing that speech, they're walking around with either holding or wearing, or a guy behind them has like the shit they've stolen from other countries. Just like he's like weighed down by it. He's just got he's holding it up for look, everybody. And the crown with the fucking diamond that you stole from a child working in a mine at the center of the earth. As you pulled him up on a rope, he's got the diamond in his hand. You're like, thank you. And you sprint back to England. And then they show it off. They just wave it around. They go, hey, look at this. Look at what we got. Fairly and squarely, right? Isn't that what it was? It was fair and square. We came to Africa. We stole your shit fair and square. Can you? I don't know. You can steal shit fair and square. No. We ripped it out of your bloody hands fair and square. I don't think the first part of the sentence is fitting with the second. How can it be fair and square if you stole it out of a child's blood-soaked hands? No, you're not listening to me. We came down there with larger guns, and we grabbed your diamonds and your jewels, and we ripped them away from them. Sometimes we killed some of you, and sometimes thousands, and we ripped it away fair and square. Yeah, okay, you keep adding on that part at the end. I really don't think it fits. Okay, and scene. So, moving on. And I'm about to shift this live stream to rumble.com/Lee Camp. For anyone who's not watching there, join me over there. It's free to watch at rumble.com/Lee Camp. All the others will stop except for leecamp.net, my locals page. If you're there, that one will continue. But all the rest, Rumble and locals, will be the only ones that will continue in a moment. But I'll do one more story here for y'all. This is Juan Guaido's boss, Leopoldo Lopez, leader of the U.S.-backed Popular Will Party, couldn't handle the most basic questioning at a think tank event in Washington, D.C. And I should give some background to this. Before I say that, let me also say, some of you have been mentioning Gonzalo Lira here in the chat. And yes, he is a journalist, kind of a citizen journalist who has been revealing a lot of the truth of what's going on in Ukraine, and he has now been arrested. I don't know the details, or I bring them to you, but basically, Ukraine's been working very hard to arrest any journalists or even just citizens who are revealing the truth about what's going on here in Ukraine in the proxy war, and they have now arrested him. So I hope that I hope that he is freed, and that the uproar over his arrest is large enough to score him his freedom. Of course, this continues to show how the client states of the U.S. do not support free press or freedom of speech. Sorry to get off on a tangent there, but so here's the caveat of the video I'm about to show you. So this is Leopoldo Lopez, the leader of the U.S.-backed opposition party in Venezuela, the opposition party that wants to take Maduro out of power, but also they, unlike many of the other opposition parties, are calling for Venezuela to be invaded by the United States, which would be rare. That's kind of not a normal behavior for a real party of a country. Like, no matter what side they're on, rarely does a party in a country say, we'd like to be invaded by outside countries. And, but that's what Guaido's been saying. Now, you guys already know Guaido, fake president of Venezuela, that the U.S. just declared president of Venezuela, even though he never received a single vote for president of Venezuela, etc. Now, everyone's essentially abandoned Guaido. He's been shipped to the United States recently because he got kicked out of Colombia. This video is my friend Dan Cohen, who I've worked with multiple times, worked with him at RT America, worked with him at Behind the Headlines on Mint Press, and awesome guy. So Dan Cohen, I have no qualm with. Somebody tells me Rumble is not working, but I had heard that it was working. Sorry, checking now. No, it seems to be. Oh, the stream won't play on Firefox, so maybe that's the problem. So if you're trying to, I don't. Maybe that's the problem. If you're trying to get to Rumble via Firefox, maybe try another browser. I don't know, but seems like it's working for most people. Anyway, so Dan Cohen, I got no qualm with him. I love Dan, and he does great work. He happens to be now working for a show called Redacted that is it's a kind of right-wing show. It's right-wing in the sense of like a Tucker Carlson right-wing, where it's like, oh, we don't want war in Ukraine, we're against economic war on Venezuela, we're against U.S. war on Haiti, but we're also kind of for war on China, and we're for various other right-wing talking points. I don't watch every episode. I have watched very little of Redacted, so I'm not going to speak to everything they believe. But among my, if they're moderately right wing, whatever, you can be that. That's whatever. My qualm is with the fact that they stole the branding of Redacted Tonight. So the name almost looks the same as Redacted Tonight. They just cut off the tonight. So now it's just, so theirs is called Redacted. A lot of people get confused and think it has some connection to my 8-year TV show, Redacted Tonight. But it does not. Beyond just stealing the branding of Redacted Tonight, it's also hosted by a former Fox News host who is the same guy who pretended to kick me off Fox News years ago 2008, I was on their morning show and I called Fox News a parade of propaganda and a festival of ignorance, which it is. And in fact, I did a segment about how horrific Fox News is just yesterday. But so I then, they don't like when you do that. I then walked out of the studio. No one spoke to me. I took off my mic, left, said my piece, walked out. I find out later, after I've left, that he came back on the show and said he walks in and he goes, had to throw that guy out the building. Pretended to have physically kicked me out of the building for saying Fox News as a parade of propaganda and a festival of ignorance. So, piece of shit as far as I'm concerned, unless he's had some amazing new awakening where he is always correct and has changed his opinions 180 degrees. Otherwise, not a fan. But anyway, I do like Dan Cohen. And this is Dan confronting the leader of one of the opposition parties. I should also give one last piece of background. Sorry for so much background. But Juan Guaido ran around Venezuela demanding a coup, saying that Maduro should be taken out of power, and saying he was the rightful president, and demanded the army join him. Now, I would like you to play a little thought experiment with me. I would like for you to take a moment and picture a member of the House of Representatives or a member of the Senate, let's say Marjorie Taylor Greene, declares she is the rightful president of the United States and that Biden should be arrested by the U.S. military, and she says all of the military is now answering to her. Would they allow that on a regular basis? I don't think she'd really keep her job. I think she'd probably be arrested. I don't know how they deal with it, but I don't think it'd be pretty. Guaido was allowed to run around the country doing this shit for many years, and Venezuela didn't arrest him. Anyway, so Dan is asking that question to this. He calls him Juan Guaido's boss, the leader of the opposition party that supports U.S. invasion. So I will play that for you now.
If Venezuela was under this dictatorship that you described, why is Mr. Guaido not in prison? He was able to walk around freely and declare himself president, which obviously the Maduro government rejected. So why was he not sitting in prison, tortured and persecuted, as you described?
Oh, he's not in prison today because he was not caught by the dictatorship.
They couldn't catch him?
They couldn't catch him, and they knew
where he lives. They know where he lives.
But he had been in hiding for weeks before he left Venezuela.
But I'm talking about for years. I mean, it was years ago that he declared.
Well, you should ask the dictatorship.
The intelligence could not find
well,
him
let me
for
tell you
years?
Something. No, let me
Are
tell
they
you
that
something.
incompetent that they could not find Guaido
let me tell
for
you something.
years?
It's not me that I'm saying that. It's not me. So let's. It's important.
He's walking around as a free man. And you're saying he's persecuted by the dictatorship.
Yes, he is. And
is the intelligence really that incompetent that they couldn't find him in all of Caracas?
You can ask Maduro about
it. The guy claimed that the reason Guaido wasn't arrested was if it's such a dictatorship, if it's such an authoritarian state, why was Guaido not arrested? And he says they couldn't find him. The dude was standing on bridges. There was one video of him like holding up his phone doing like TikTok where he's standing there calling for a coup, saying the military's joining me. And he's like he's filming his location. They couldn't find him. They fucking knew where he was. Anyway, that is how pathetic the excuses are for this fake Venezuelan government. Okay, all the rest of the live stream, which I have plenty more stories, is at rumble.com/LeeCamp and LeeCamp.net. That's rumble.com/LeeCamp and LeeCamp.net, my locals page.